Hello, all 5 people watching. No, I'm kidding. I haven't done this in a long time because of the algorithms here on Facebook and ScrewTube and all of that. Plus, I've been busy with my own news show, Counter Narrative, on ampnews.us, where you can get uncensored news and it won't mess with the algorithm and only show it to like a handful of people. But thank you for the people that are stopping in. It does say don't bother sending me stars. Well, Facebook finally ended up releasing the funds. So if you want to send stars now, you can. Maybe I'll get them. Maybe I won't. We'll see. But I don't want to waste too much time chit-chatting. I will try and do this more as I have time. But as you know, with a new baby, I'm losing my mind. It's been kind of crazy lately. So I want to dive in with my guest. You might recognize him. I tried to beat the algorithm by spelling his name with numbers. You might have noticed because I was like, oh, Facebook's definitely not going to let this fly if I give the forbidden name. But you'll recognize him when he joins. And like I said, I don't want to waste any time because he's short on time. So this is going to be a quick one. Welcome into Ow3n Shroy3r. Did you notice how I kind of like hesitated as I said your name? I feel like I'm like saying a forbidden name. I'm like, Ow3n Shroy3r, like trying to always beat this algorithm when you're on these different platforms, you know, that are constantly trying to censor you, right?
Well, the number 1 and number 2 platforms that engage in that activity are now Facebook and YouTube. So we'll see. I mean, I was just on Timcast on YouTube and they didn't censor or silence that transmission. So you might be all right.
You know, I was just had on my show it's going to air on Thursday, the founder of Wimkin, and he was deplatformed off of the whole app was off of Apple and Google Play because they tied that social media app to January 6th. And it's just, you know, he says, you know, people should stop using this platform and ScrewTube and everything. But my thing is like every now and again, I'll try because it's like, maybe we can reach a different audience. Maybe there's some folks that aren't familiar with what happened or the fake news that surrounds what happened to you, if you want to talk about that. But I do want to talk about the latest media malfeasance with what WaPo did to you, Washington Post, because it's just so hilarious. Like I literally was like laughing out loud when I saw the picture. But first, for those that might not know your story, like I said, we don't have a whole lot of time with you, but if you want to just break down, you know, you basically were just recently released from prison for essentially speaking on January 6th that day. Do you want to explain that in the abbreviated version?
Well, sure. I am a speech criminal in the United States of America. The government made that perfectly clear in their sentencing memo, citing my speech not on January 6th, but before and after January 6th, things I said on my talk show, like calling Joe Biden a communist Chinese agent. These were apparently worthy of incarceration, speech like this. And then to make it even worse, once I went into prison as a speech prisoner, I then became a speech prisoner inside the prison. They have a prison inside the prison. It's called the Special Housing Unit. That's where they send people that stab people, smuggle contraband in, cigarettes, drugs, what have you. Well, I made a phone call thanking people for mail and for prayers and letting them know I was out of solitary confinement. I went in the first week I was in solitary confinement. And then that phone call, my speech on that phone call, winded me up in the special housing unit, where I spent the majority of my time with only 3 movements a week, 15 minutes to shower, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You shower in a cage. They cuff you on every movement, and you have to push a little button. You get like 2 minutes of water. It's a miserable process. And so this is what we have in America now, where I have to be afraid of speaking or I'm going to wind up in jail again. I'm going to wind up in prison again. This is what you get from the most oppressive, authoritarian regimes on planet Earth, communist China, communist North Korea, and now it's right here in the United States of America. And while selfishly, I mean, obviously I can talk about myself all day long and the trials and tribulations of my story, but really my heart breaks for future generations of Americans. My heart breaks for the future Americans that are going to have to worry. If I speak my mind, if I tell the truth about political corruption or government corruption, am I going to wind up in jail? You know, this is something that now has to lurk in the back of my mind every time I do an interview, every time I host a show. And I just hope that that's not the future for America, because it's extremely concerning that that's where this country is going. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it happens under Democrat Party leadership. This is classical leftism, whether it's socialism, communism, fascism. These are all left-wing ideologies, and that's what is now occupying our current government.
Yeah, and if you're just joining us, we're talking to Ow3n Shroy3r, host of War Room with Ow3n Shroy3r. You can find on InfoWars or band.video, which you will not find on some of the platforms that I'm streaming on right now. But wanted to give you the opportunity to hear straight from him, because if you listen to mainstream media, you're going to get a completely different idea of the kind of person Ow3n Shroy3r is. He was just recently released from prison for speaking on January 6th. You know, did he hurt someone? Did he knock out a window to get solitary confinement? No, he was just actually telling people to peacefully leave the area. But again, like if you were watching mainstream news, you would have a totally different perception of what happened or even who he is. I want to share what the Washington Post had on their, here we go. So this is what the Washington Post had. And I laugh every time I see it because it has a picture of Ow3n Shroy3r. It says in the subheading there, it refers to you having been in prison and this man, which is clearly not you. So give me the update on what happened there, because they were making it seem like you're a crazed individual that was violent that day. But that's not you.
Yeah, it's clearly not me. And I mean, I don't want to put anything past the Washington Post. I mean, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if they're that inept, incompetent, and or lazy. But probably it's more deception is my guess. And so me and my legal counsel have taken legal action against the Washington Post for this. They have a certain amount of hours to respond before we move this forward with a lawsuit. And so this is what you deal with. And, you know, it's not just the Washington Post, because here's the deal. And this is really the case with most conservatives. And I think it's the same reason, you know, people always ask, why are liberals always out in the streets protesting? Do they not have anything better to do? Do they not have jobs? Do they not have families? Do they not have hobbies? Well, that might be the case, but why can't conservatives get out in the street? Why don't conservatives protest and do all this stuff? Well, we do have jobs and families and hobbies and everything else. And it's the same reason why we don't get litigious. Conservatives are not known for getting litigious. We don't like to engage in litigation. It's costly. It's timely. It's annoying, and we have better things to do. But we've reached this threshold now where we have to be litigious. I've had to be extremely litigious in the last, well, really year or so of my life. I've had to file litigation against X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm now having to file this litigation against the Washington Post. I'm having to take my case to the Supreme Court. I mean, I'm involved in litigation and legal counsel meetings daily now. It's not something I want to do. It's quite obnoxious. It's quite time consuming and costly, but we have to do this now. The left has assumed that they can get away with anything because they know we're not litigious. And that's part of the reason why we suffer so many defeats politically and in the legal realm. So we've got to start taking legal action. Unfortunately, I'm being forced to take legal action against the Washington Post, and we'll see what happens. We'll know before Christmas if we have to take further steps in going after the Washington Post for what we believe is illegal activity.
And again, we're talking about this picture right here that they deceptively put in the subheadline, InfoWars host Ow3n Shroy3r sentenced to 60 days in jail in January 6th riot. But that is clearly not the man that you see on my screen right now. There's clearly not Ow3n Shroy3r. The purpose obviously would be to make it seem like Owen is this crazed, violent maniac, when really there was nothing violent you did that day. But again, Owen served time in prison, even in solitary confinement. And if you actually read the court documents, it's talking about what he said on his show and what he said that day. Remind me what you said there that day that they particularly had issue with. Oh, you referred to them as tyrants, right?
The three things they quoted me saying that day was leading a chant of 1776, leading a chant of USA. This is actually in the government documents. And then I guess the most offensive language I had that day was chanting death to tyrants. Now, these are all just quotes in the sentencing memo. And the way this whole case developed is extremely, I would say rare, been seen before. We reached a plea agreement with the prosecution, with the U.S. attorneys before this happened, in which they assured us that they weren't going to push for jail time. And my guess is I don't think that was their own idea. I think that probably came from the top. I could be wrong. But more or less, when you do the plea agreement, you're not going into your sentencing date, your sentencing hearing to fight a court case. You're not going in there to fight for your innocence or reputation or anything. Well, they made it. It was like I was going into a trial. And so they made all these accusations in their sentencing memo, but there's no demand for discovery. There's no presentation of evidence. So they can just write all of this stuff in their sentencing memo, but they don't have to present evidence. They don't have to be called to present evidence. We don't get to demand discovery. It just becomes essentially government hearsay of saying I did all this stuff without having to present any evidence or proof whatsoever. So I don't remember all my actions on January 6th. I obviously know I didn't do anything violent. I didn't encourage any violence. We submitted evidence to the U.S. government showing that we tried to stop people going into the Capitol, which they acknowledge in their documents. They also acknowledge that I said we were there peacefully multiple times. They acknowledge that as well in their documents. They acknowledge that we tried to work with the Capitol Police to stop the whole thing from going down. But then they say I chanted 1776 USA and death to tyrants. Well, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I wasn't going to court that day to defend myself. And of course, they can just say these things and the judge is just assuming that it's true, but they don't have to present any evidence. But let's say that I did chant 1776. Let's say that I did chant USA, USA. How is that criminal speech? How is that incitement of anything? And if they want to claim that chanting death to tyrants is incitement of anything, well, death to tyrants is the saying.
If you're not a tyrant.
Right? Well, it
Right?
would only offend a tyrant, but it's also the slogan of the Virginia state flag. So here's what the deal is. We can get into the ins and outs of this case, and of which there are many significant details. But the truth is this. The U.S. government has to make an example out of me because I'm one of the most boldest and fearless people in the media. Okay. I don't really say that as something boastful because I'm really a humble person when you meet me. And I'm actually a really nice guy. I get along with everybody. I don't carry my political baggage around with me when I'm out in my social life, but that's just the truth. They don't like that I go down to the border and tell Border Patrol that they're engaging in human trafficking and completing the illegal immigrant pipeline. They don't like that I go in front of the sham Trump impeachment hearing and telling them that the whole thing is fake and Trump is innocent. They don't like that. They don't like that I go and tell the truth out to the public and on my show every day. So they have to make an example of Ow3n Shroy3r, and that's what they've done. And now other journalists are about to be incarcerated because they got away with it with me. And that's what's so dangerous about this.
Yeah.
I am just a test case. I am just a precedent-setting case. Now that the U.S. government has gotten away with sentencing and imprisoning me for speech, they're coming after many journalists after me. And because that's now the precedent and they got barely any pushback in the Justice Department, and I mean, really, it was just one magistrate judge who told them what they were doing was illegal, and barely any pushback in Congress, just a small handful of congressmen and women talking about my case. They decided we're going to go forward with this and we're going to start arresting journalists for their speech. That's the America we live under with Joe Biden as president and the Democrats running the country.
And they've continued to make arrests, and it's just so blatant, like that it's because of what they stand for, because the journalists aren't spouting their narrative. But I did tell you I was going to keep this short because I want to honor your time, because you're my friend and because I know that you've been in high demand with what you've been through. But just a quick other questions just to clarify. So you may have to move forward with litigation against Washington Post because of misrepresenting who you are, using a different person's picture, not yours, in their post. Have they taken that down yet?
As far as I can tell, no. I haven't really had time to follow up. I had a meeting with my legal counsel this morning where we filed um, essentially the first step, which is just a paperwork and a request for a retraction, apology, and removal of the content that we view as defamatory and libelous. And they have a certain amount of hours to respond. And should they not respond and follow through with our requests, then we will move forward with whatever litigation needs to follow. Again, this is the last thing I want to be doing over the Christmas holiday. I mean, like you said, I've been doing 4 or 5 interviews a day since I got out of prison less than 10 days ago. So, I mean, I barely even have the time for this. I can barely even keep my head above water. But this is what we have to do. That's what they want to do. They want to drown us out. They want to keep us busy. They want to make sure that we don't have the time or the energy or the commitment to do this stuff. And so, but we have to. They have the commitment to destroy our country. They have the commitment to destroy us at a very personal level. And so we have to make the commitment back. And so we'll see what happens. The fact that they haven't removed it yet tells me that they're not going to. And so my guess is that litigation is going to have to move forward, and we'll see.
And I know you don't want to do that, Owen, but the thing is this is the things that we have to do for others, because we have to hold the media accountable. Otherwise, we're just going to get more of the same. Other people are going to be victims of this nonsense. I got to admit to you that, you got out early. I had intended to write to you while you were in prison. And I am so suspicious of the media and how sick it is and how they're in cahoots with our government, that I was tempted to write you a letter and be like, Owen, your baby's been born. And like knowing that you would get the joke, because I was like, if this ends up like as a news article, like, then I'll know that they're leaking and, love child, whatever. But it was just because I'm so distrustful of the whole system about how they, there's always leaks when it comes to Trump, when it comes to anything on one side of the aisle that are convenient. And, and it's just, they're always in lockstep, the media and the commie government that we're now under,
Yeah, that would have been a funny story. I think that I was getting so much mail that I'm
you
not
might not even have seen it.
Oh, no. I read every letter I got in there. It was 500 minimum, but I think that the mail was so overwhelming in their mailroom that they kind of just quit reading it. They are supposed to read every letter. I'm not trying to throw anybody in there under the bus, but I suspect they just quit reading it because they didn't want to. It would have been extremely time consuming for them. But I will tell you, there were some other issues that I ran into with the mail in there. Legal mail being opened when I was not present, which is illegal. And we also saw some instances of legal mail being doctored, not mine, but other individuals. So, I mean, look, there's all kinds of problems inside the Bureau of Prisons. And, part of me feels like God wanted me to go through this and, quite frankly, experience the worst of it so that I could come out and tell this story, because most the men and women, I only saw the men's side of it, but I can tell for certain that most of the men, if not all the men that go through this, they don't have the outlet that I have. They don't have the platform I have. They don't have the following I have. So they just get treated like crap. They get disrespected and they get treated like dirt inside the system. And the assumption from the inside is nobody's going to care and nobody's going to hear them. And so they assume that same thing with me. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And fortunately for me, that wasn't the case. And I think that's maybe part of the reason why I got out early. I know that's the reason why I got out of the special housing unit early. I was supposed to spend almost my entire time there, but I got out of that one early, and I know that's why. So now I have to tell this story, not for my sake, but I think for the sake of this massive injustice that's happening in our country today, from the Justice Department to the Bureau of Prisons. They thought they could treat me like every other criminal in there, like I was just a number and not even a human. And I'm going to have to tell this story now.
And we thank you for doing it. And we thank you for the extra time that you're taking to field all of these interviews. I know I went over on time with you, but I just wanted to end on this positive note that I really appreciated what you had to say when you went on with Alex the next day, that, that you used that time to read like 15 books in the Bible, and, that you looked at the positive side of it. And I think that that's what we're always hoping, is that we take these trials with positivity and come out stronger and with a new perspective on the other side. And so that was really encouraging to hear that that you did come out on the other side with an appreciation for that time that it gave you to reflect, right?
Well, so much of life is about how you deal with failure. And successful people and victorious people are the ones that deal with failure the best. I mean, I don't know if you want to say failure is the best word or setbacks are the best word, perhaps challenges or
Challenge.
obstacles.
Yeah.
People who deal the best with those in their lives are the people that come out on top. So I would encourage all people. I said this later in a follow-up video. I lost 15 pounds when I was in prison. And I'm also a person that likes to say extremely physically fit. And I lost, I mean, a lot of my strength while I was in there. And I'd said to my audience, I don't view this as a setback. I view this as another challenge. I view this as another challenge that I can overcome and come out as a better person and just increase my character. And so that's how you deal with this. That's what separates the winners from the losers in life. It's how you deal with failures, setbacks, and challenges. So I just look at it as another challenge, another opportunity to overcome challenge and become a better person.
All right. Well, keep us updated on everything that you're going through and how we can support you. If you are seeing him for the first time in a new light, and certainly not how Washington Post represented him, then watch some more. Go to band.video. You can watch him at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, every day, Monday through Friday on band.video, War Room with Ow3n Shroy3r. Thank you, Ow3n.
All right, Christy. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
You too.